What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss why taking a holistic approach to health is so important. So first, before I jump into it, I want to talk a small bit on the program that I have out at the moment. So it's a foundational mobility program, and it is basically for people who have an idea of mobility. They understand why they should be doing it. They understand what they maybe should be doing, and how they should maybe plan a session, but they just don't have the knowledge of the exercises and the order that you put it into, and how many times a week you should do it, or what length of time you should do it, and then how to adapt it as well. So it's a program, it's meant for people, as I said, who have an idea of mobility but just want something a bit more structured to help them achieve their mobility and movement goals. Now, it does line up with this podcast, because it does take a holistic approach to that program, in terms of I talk about sleep health, I talk about hydration, and I talk about what you can do on a daily basis to improve your mobility overall. So it's not just you take the 15 20 minutes to go through the session, it's what you can do throughout that day to actually get the best out of the session that you just did. On top of that, then I also bring in different breathing routines you can do, and just how it will affect your ability. I talk about how breathing will affect your mobility, and why it's important to include it at the start of your session, just to help you ease into it. So jumping back to today's podcast, I want to discuss a few different things. So why is a holistic approach to health? Why is it so important? Well, holistic first is a comprehensive approach. It's an integrated approach. It's a full-on approach in terms of you look at everything. You don't just pick one thing and say this is the issue. You take a look at everything. You might look at, let's say initially you're going to look at the tissues, or I'll use movement for example. So when you're looking at what's affecting somebody's movement, somebody's mobility, there's a lot of things you have to look at. Now, you could be very specific, and I see people doing this a lot, and it takes away the human element, and they put it down to mechanical elements only. So what they'll do is they'll look at, let's say, somebody who has knee pain, then they will go down and they'll say you have knee pain because your glutes are weak and because your foot is supinated or overpronated, and that's the reason you've knee pain, and there's nothing else to that. So if we build up your foot and then we build up your hip, you'll be good. So that is a good approach in ways. You're definitely focusing on two things that will need to improve, but it's not a holistic approach. So basically you've improved the two things, but that pain can come back again. And I talk about pain a lot in on my podcast and on Instagram, and I have a podcast called The Pain Experience, and it goes into a lot more detail on what causes pain and what could be contributing to pain. But I'm using this for an example. Just when you look at that and you isolate it down, you make it all about a mechanical issue. Mechanical meaning it's bone on bone, or something is not working right structurally, so that's why you're having that pain. And then they take away that human element in the fact that they don't look at the person's lifestyle, what they're eating, what they're sleeping like, what they're drinking, even if they're drinking too much in terms of alcohol, or just drinking normally, like not taking in enough water throughout the day, if they're not hydrating themselves well enough, I should say, and then their general movement, and then with their stress, what they're doing to manage their stress, and then their work-life balance. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail on all of these as I go through this. So if we're looking at what's affecting somebody's movement on a daily basis, or it could be just something new that's come up, you want to look at a few different things. So starting out, let's look locally at what the issue may be. So is the issue in the tissue? So basically, is the issue that they're having, do they have a muscle injury? Do they have a ligament injury at the site of pain, or at the site of you can see where the movement limitation is. So is it actually the tissue there that's damaged and now they can't support themselves, and there's a physical barrier to stopping that movement or limiting that movement? So like you could say they have an injury now, or it could be a previous injury and there's a lot of scar tissue in the area and they haven't used it as much, so they've lost a lot of movement there. And then you have to look at the nervous system. So how they react when you put them in different situations, when you get them landing from a jump. Let's say if it's a knee, what their body reacts like, where they move their weight or how they transfer their weight from side to side. And you could say if you're looking at the nervous system, how did they organize themselves? If you even just get them to stand up straight, and I'll talk about posture a small bit more as we go through this podcast, but that's really important. Like, how does their body organize themselves? Because it's not them consciously thinking about it. It's subconsciously. It's how their bone structure is going to affect the way they move, how their bone length even is going to affect how they move, their muscle size, their muscle strength, and then obviously the way they hold themselves, how all that's going to affect it. And that comes down to the nervous system, because it's your nervous system that's activating muscles, it's relaxing muscles, it's getting you moving, and it's getting you to do things that you want to do. And then outside of that, you want to look at their medical history. Obviously, that's another huge one. And medical history can be absolutely anything from, has this person had a stroke so that one side of their body is affected, and they actually physically are paralyzed on certain segments of their body, or that they can't move them properly? Or did they have, let's say, Parkinson's, where they struggle to coordinate movements? Or even down to things like, have they got diabetes? And obviously there's things that you're at risk of different illnesses and different diseases, because if you have diabetes, so like something simple like frozen shoulder, that's one of the main ones that they associate with diabetes. Or even looking at like medical history, if they had a surgical, if they had an operation on a knee or a hip or a shoulder, you're going to see different movement limitations or restrictions in different areas because of the surgery, obviously. So you have to take into account their medical history and how that's going to affect it as well. And it's really important to ask people that, especially when you're in your session. It doesn't have to be straight out of, do you have diabetes? Do you have epilepsy? Because that's what you can do. But you can gauge how they are and chat to them about different things and bring it up and see then how they react to that. And once they do tell you if they do have it, you have to take that into account, how that might be affecting, might that be affecting their movement. Now, that's at a local kind of a general overview of what you would look at locally. Now, when you step back and you look globally, so you start to take more of a holistic approach to it, and you have to start to assess many other components and many other things that may be contributing. So when we look at this holistic approach, a really simple way to think about it is this biopsychosocial model, and it's something that they're teaching or laying down in college a lot now, even though it's been around for thousands of years. But now they can put a name to it. I suppose it's easier to use. But basically, a biopsychosocial model is when you look at the biological, so what's affecting your biological, and as I said there, your tissues, your nervous system, your medical history, your psychological, so that takes into account your attitudes and behaviors, your beliefs, your posture, and then, I threw in posture there myself. I'll talk to that in a second. But stick with attitudes, behaviors, beliefs. And then also takes into account your stress levels, your confidence, your psychological, and then your social. And your social is your relationships with other people. So your social is such an important aspect that a lot of people forget about. And especially in the way we are now, at the moment it's quarantine, so you don't have much of a choice. But keeping up your relationship with friends and with family is so important. And it ties back to your biological and your psychological, how your body reacts to that. So that's a holistic approach in a nutshell. Once you look at all those components, you are taking a fairly general approach to everything. And once you're taking care of individual parts of each of those, that's what I suppose you could define as the most holistic approach, or a holistic approach, not the most, because there's always more things you can look at. So I'm not going to say that there are only three things, but I digress on what I was saying. Looking first, I'm going to touch on the psychological. I went through the biological there in terms of your tissue and your previous injury, your medical history, and how your nervous system is reacting, and if there's an injury, there's time and all that. Now let's look more globally. Let's look at the psychological on top of that and what may be affecting that. So with the psychological, you're looking at people's attitudes and behaviors. And then their beliefs as well. It's a huge one. So a really common belief that you get with a lot of people who have back pain is they feel that if they bending over is bad for your back. That's a really common one that you will see, and I'm sure anyone that's listening to this has heard that somewhere before, that bending down is bad for your back, or bending down and picking stuff up off the ground is bad for you. So I'll clear it up straight away. Bending down is definitely not bad for your back. Your spine is meant to bend. So it's really, really important to remember that. Now, if you have a belief that bending down is going to cause you back pain, and any time that you bend over, you're damaging your back, when you actually do bend over to pick something up where you have to, like let's say you're bending down to pick up a child, or you are bending over to pick a pen that fell on the ground, something simple like that, or you could be bending over to pick up a box. If you do that, let's say unbeknownst to yourself, and you have the belief that bending down is going to cause you back pain, you will most likely get back pain after you do that, or down the line, or even after a hard day of work. You're going to get back pain in terms of you're going to be like, geez, I shouldn't have done that all day. You're feeding yourself these conversations, you're feeding yourself different lines about why you shouldn't have done that, and how it's bad for your back, and then you might forget it and it might be sitting in the back of your head, but it sits back into your subconscious and it starts to come out then in daily life. You'll notice if you try to bend over, you're going to be a lot tighter, you're going to be a lot more restricted, you're going to have a lot more pain when you're doing it, or you might even lean to one side when you're going down. Another common compensatory mechanism that people have is they go down on one knee all the time. So they never actually bend down, they go down on one knee. So then when they have to bend down, the body feels that's an unsafe position, and then it'll give them a lot of pain. So you can see why your beliefs are so important. Now, looking at that from another perspective, if your family had back pain, you will start to feel, if your, let's say, father had back pain, you're going to be worried about back pain. You're going to feel that it is more of a debilitating injury because, let's say, you saw that person, or saw your one of your family members laid up for a couple of days with it. So you will be obviously fearful of it, fear of movement, fear of that happening to yourself. And because of that, you're feeding yourself that negative, I suppose, dialogue all the time. And with that, your body picks up on it. Okay, so your brain is always picking up on everything. And the reason I'm covering this psychological part of it is because what you tell yourself is what will generally happen. So if you feel you have back pain from bending down, you most likely will. If you feel that you're all right, you on a general basis probably will be all right as well. So it depends what you're feeding yourself, and it's really important to look at your beliefs when it comes to health and see what different things are. Okay, and that's why it's when you see research headlines just thrown up, that's why it can be have such an effect on people. And because people who are completely, let's say, people who have very strong ties to the scientific method, I suppose, will find, now this is obviously anyone that really knows science or has a good idea of science will obviously look into the papers and have a better idea of the population and the control and how the actual study was laid out in the method. But if you have a fairly strong belief that research is the best way all of the time, and you see headlines about different things and you just didn't look into it, then you are going to pick up on those headlines. And especially when it comes to health, that's why they can be detrimental or not advantageous at all. So really good one is that back pain one, and the fact that they have manual handling courses all the time telling you how to not bend down and how to go down and pick stuff up off the ground telling you how to pick stuff up off the ground is obviously feeds that. So when you see that, you're going to be like, all right, you see the headline, the next time you bend down, your belief changes, you have a lot more pain in your back. Now, another thing about headlines, and I don't want to go down that path too much, but you can see how like different things would cause different, like knees over toes was another one. Don't ever bring your knee over your toe when you're squatting or you're lunging. Load of shit. It doesn't make any difference at all. It's good for you. Your body's supposed to move into the end range. You're supposed to do that. So, but I'll go into more detail on that on another podcast. So you can see people's beliefs are going to change how their body reacts to stuff. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that right now we have an idea of the basics of how your mind changes your body. But I feel in the next couple of years that it's really, really going to come to the fore about what's going on in your internal environment and how that affects how that biologically will affect your body. So I can see that down the line happening. So, and I really wonder, and I love to see the research come out on it. Like obviously depression is associated with a higher mortality rate. You know these different stats that are going to be associated with different things, but why and what beliefs are associated with different diseases? I think that's going to be something going down the line that might come up a small bit more, and I'm just going to put that there for now, and I'm going to come back to that in a couple of years, and hopefully that has some basis to it. But no, I really feel that beliefs and your attitudes affect the way your body reacts to different things. Obviously, stress is a big one. You know that is going to be a big one anyway. So I digress. To go back to what I was talking about. I'm going to go on to posture now. So posture is, people look at posture, and I see people like postural correctional specialists and stuff like that, and all they look at, or a lot of the time, all they look at is the mechanical side of things. So they'll say you have rounded shoulders and your back is or your toes are turned in. Now, from a mechanical point of view, what people will look at a lot of the time is they'll say your pecs are really tight, your neck flexors are extremely tight, and your back is really weak as well. And mechanically, that makes sense. You could see why that would cause you to come into that position. But really, and the reason I mentioned the toes pointed in as well is because it ties into this, and you'll see a lot of people like this, and it's a more extreme example than just the shoulders one, because a lot of people will have rounded shoulders. But posture is a better reflection of somebody's internal environment as it is to their external, let's say their mechanical or their external environment. Okay, and what I mean is, looking at somebody's posture, you have a better idea of how they will cope in different situations. So people who are by nature nervous or not very confident, don't like public places, prefer to be by themselves, they will have that rounded shoulder posture, but they're also going to have the toes turned in. And it comes back to the thing, if you look at animals in the wild, a confident animal is going to stand up tall, straight, make themselves as big as possible. And somebody who's not confident, or an animal that's not confident at all or is under threat, will make themselves as small as possible. And it's a reflection of that. So that translates over to how we hold ourselves as well. And our posture is a good reflection of what's going on inside our head. So when you're tired, a lot of the time, your shoulders are going to be rounded and shrugged because you're fatigued, and you don't want to hold that position as much anymore. And you will fall into that position because your hands are in front of you. Let's say you're on your phone and you'll make kind of a ball of yourself. But look at how you react when you meet somebody. So do you hold that position all the time, or do you stand up straight and stand up with your shoulders back and your chest out? Because if you do, then it's not a mechanical issue all the time. So it's not that you can't do it because it's your chest is too tight. It's that you choose to go into that position. And it's the same for someone, as I said, someone that's not confident is going to stand in a small position. They're going to make themselves as small as possible. Somebody is confident, and an excellent example of this is, and I use it all the time, would be someone like Conor McGregor. They make themselves as big as possible. So they stand up, chest out, arms out to the side, nice wide stance to make themselves big and strong and look powerful, I guess. And look at anyone, look at a gorilla in the wild, look at two lions that are going to go up against each other, or two tigers, anything like that. They always try and make themselves as big as possible. And anyone here who's from anyone who's listening to this who's from a farming background will know that. You'll see how, let's say, the more confident animals on a farm are going to be bigger in general. Obviously, they're going to be more confident because they're bigger, but they'll hold themselves a lot stronger, or a lot bigger, or a lot wider. And if they're going to go fighting with another thing like a dog, or I should say like a dog is a good example, they will make themselves bigger. A cat is another good example. They'll shrug up their shoulders to make their spine look bigger and stronger. So you have to look at that, how your internal environment affects your external environment, and then how that is going to affect somebody's movement and movement capacity. Now, on from that, I'm going to look at a couple of things then that you can change. So I don't want to make this podcast really, really long so that you're caught listening. I'll will be touching on this more as I go through podcasts. So I don't want to just fit it all into one and just say that's it, because there's definitely a lot more things I have to cover. A few other things I wanted to talk about would be like breathing and stress, your sleep, your hydration, your diet, your activity levels, what you can do, and your general movement levels. And another thing then would be load management. And taking a holistic approach would be looking at your work-life balance and what your training load is like at the moment. So what is your work-life balance like? Are you working your 9 to 5 or 9 to 4, 9 to 6, whatever you're working, and then leaving work where it is and coming home and doing something else when you come home in the evening? Or do you find, because you're working at home at the moment, a lot of people are, is it dragging into your evening time a small bit more? And do you find yourself getting one more thing done? Especially this is something if you're self-employed. I know it myself. If you're self-employed, it's very hard to just cut off and leave it all there and say, right, 5 o'clock, I'm done. Because it's just easy to just say, I'll do one more thing and I'll get this done and I'll get that done. But look at your work-life balance and how it is, or what differentiates you working and you living. Okay, so in the evenings, do you find yourself coming in and sitting down and just watching TV and eating dinner, watching TV, and then going to work the next day and eating dinner and watching TV? And for some people, that'll be perfect balance. But for people who are used to an active lifestyle and used to doing stuff, used to getting there, challenging themselves in different ways or learning new skills, they're going to find that very hard, and it's going to put you're going to be down from it. You're going to be down and out, and you're not going to enjoy your life as much. So looking at your work-life balance, how that is going to affect, and the reason I'm saying that now, I'm going to come back to why I'm connecting that to movement and somebody's movement ability and capacity, is you need to check what you're doing outside of work and make sure that you are actually doing different activities. So even if it's something like playing an instrument, if it's going for a run or a walk in the evenings or in the morning, or if it's just sitting and chatting to your partner or friends and talking to people, because that comes into your social side of things. Remember the biopsychosocial. On the social side of things, you need to converse with other people. You need to chat to them. You need to get their opinion, put your opinion out there. I suppose talk about different things, talk about your own life, anything you have any issues with or any trouble with, talk about that with somebody you know, or somebody you trust. And it does obviously gets it off your chest, but it changes your life up, and it changes you going from being in the rat race where you're just working all day and then relaxing in the evening to work the next day, and it fills your life and makes it more fulfilling. So how does that affect someone's movement? So let's look at that, how your work-life balance would affect somebody's movement capacity. And it's something I do with all my clients. I talk to them about work. We talk about how their stress levels are at the moment. Is work picking up? What you're doing at the weekend, what you're doing outside of work, what you're doing outside of training. How are you fulfilling yourself, or what are you doing to keep yourself interested? So, and the reason I say this is because a lot of the people I work with have had an injury for years and years and years, and they take they're finding it hard to get over the injury, or they're finding it hard. They've went a lot of different ways and tried a load of different techniques, and some are quick fixes, some are long term, and found it hard to stick to them. So we just look at, let's say if I have somebody who has long-term hip pain, we'll look at everything, obviously what's causing the hip pain, but we'll go into their beliefs a good bit, as I've touched on earlier. We'll talk about basically everything I've discussed in this and more, but then we'll also look at what they're doing outside of work, and then what they're doing to manage their stress better, and what they're doing to make them more fulfilled. So let's say journaling is a big one that I get people to try out. I'll talk about even juggling, Something like even skipping is a really good one. It's something that I've introduced a lot more now because it's rhythmic, it's nice, it's enjoyable, you get better at it. You know when you get better at it, there's different tricks you can do, and it's not very taxing either. So simple things like that. What are you doing at the weekends? Are you just training every weekend? Or are you actually spreading it out and maybe going to see something? Obviously now is a small bit more difficult. That's why when we're talking now, I do try to suggest a few different things, because it can be more difficult when your routine is just work at home, cook dinner at home, stay at home, same thing, rinse and repeat every day. So really, really important. If you don't have a good work-life balance and your training load is really high, you're going to find yourself getting fatigued, you're going to find yourself getting stressed, and you'll find yourself getting burnt out. And through that, it's going to affect your posture, how you deal with people, how you talk to people. It's going to reflect your internal environment. And if it's affecting your internal environment, that's going to affect your external environment. Or it's going to affect how you move your body. It's going to affect how your body feels in general. It's going to affect how your older injuries might kick up again. It's going to affect so many things. So it's really important to manage your stress right and to take the time to do stuff outside of training. So guys, that's everything from me today. That's all I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to go through why taking a holistic approach, I'm not going to cut that out, why taking a holistic approach to training is so important. And a holistic approach to health is even more important. And what you have to look at. So I want you to think about that biopsychosocial model and what you're doing to tick boxes on each side of that. So what you're doing to tick boxes on the biological side, in terms of like your activity levels and your training levels, or your training and your recovery. On the psychological side, so what you're doing to relax your mind or manage stress better, and keeping an eye on what your beliefs are like. And then your social side. So what are you doing with friends at the moment? I know a lot of people are doing like Zoom call parties, stuff like that, quizzes. Could be an idea if that's what you're interested in. But make sure that you are chatting to people and talking to people all the time. It's at the depths of the winter now for when I'm recording this. I'm recording this on the 23rd of January at 10 o'clock at night because I was caught all day today and caught all week doing stuff. So it's going to be out tomorrow. What were you doing this winter to keep yourself engaged? It's really important to keep yourself engaged, to keep your mood up, to change things up every once in a while, and to also, as I was saying, reach out to friends and chat to them, reach out to family members. And it's at this time of the year, someone might value it a lot more than you value actually getting in contact with them in the first place. So really important, guys, take the time, get in contact with somebody you know, and yeah, just make sure you're taking care of your own mental health. So that really ties into your social side of things. So it's not just about training, it's not just about meditating and you having your breathing routine. It does come back to building relationships with people you know, or people you trust, or people you love, and actually talking to them a good bit. Okay, and conversing and challenging yourself with them and challenging yourself outside of that, because it all plays into it. And that's what a holistic approach is. That's all from me, guys, today. If anyone is interested, you can check out that foundational mobility program, what I discussed earlier on in this podcast. It's on my website at mobilitytutor.com. You can also get in contact with me through Instagram. If anyone has, as I mentioned, guys, a lot of my clients are people who have long-term injuries and struggling to get over them. So if that's you, if that resonates with you, get in contact with me through Instagram, and let's see if we are the right fit for each other and see if I can help you out. If you just want to ask me a couple of questions as well, no issue at all. You can send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com, or you can get on to me on Instagram. That's all for me today, guys. Thanks a million for listening again, and have a good one.